All right, so we made it to Friday. We did it. So these weeks go by so long now, don't they? All right, so today we're going to be going over the rest of the speech that you read yesterday just to make sure you accurately analyzed it. And then you're going to be doing your analysis activity with it. So before we dive back into the speech, I first want to talk about today's assignment so you know what you're going to be doing afterwards. And then we'll go back over the speech itself. Okay, so this is the document that was posted to you on Google Classroom today. So again, we're working on the skills of rhetorical analysis, but I don't necessarily want to burn you guys out with writing and writing and writing this formal version of rhetorical analysis twice a week. So on Fridays, it's going to be a little more open-ended and creative the way that you express it. So today you sort of have like a choose your own adventure. How do you want to explain your analysis? So no matter which of the four choices you pick, so you've got four different options here, your analysis still needs to address all of the same things about the speech. So that's this top part right here. So you need to show that you have a sophisticated understanding of all parts of the rhetorical situation. So that's space, like do you have this deep understanding of the speaker, who he is, what he was trying to do, his purpose for giving the speech, why it was persuasive to that particular audience, and what his context and exigence were. Then you need to identify at least 3 significant rhetorical choices that he utilized, and you are analyzing only one of those rhetorical choices more in depth. So one of the 3, use a quote. Why does Cuomo use that specific rhetorical choice, and how does it impact his audience? Okay, so this is sort of like your checkbox. Did I include all 3 of these things here? I guess technically it's a little bit more than 3 when it's broken down. Okay. But you have a choice in how you want to do that. I'm actually going to skip ahead to choice number 4 first, because this corresponds to what you normally do. If you want to stick with this traditional paragraph response, you can absolutely do that. Whether that's because like this is what you're going to be doing on the AP test, so you want that best practice for the test, or it's just because you feel like it's the most straightforward option. You guys have already done this time after time after time on your Langgang journals. An intro paragraph and a body analysis paragraph is essentially what you're doing there. So feel free to choose just that classic option, but just know that we're going to be doing this pretty much every Tuesday. We're going to be doing like an intro and a body paragraph every Tuesday. So you don't need to choose that today, but you can if you want to. Okay, your other options, okay, a little less formal, is you guys did such an awesome job with your podcast, and I know that some people just like to talk about their analysis a lot more. So you can just verbally speak your analysis. So it can be a podcast or a video. It doesn't need to be long. There's no length requirement. I'm not looking for length. I'm just looking for these components. So however long it takes you to include all of those things, you can either just record it on a voice memo and upload that voice file like you guys did for your podcast, or you can do like a YouTube video and upload that. That's totally an option. Okay, choice number 2 is for my people like, shout out to Alexa, usually part of the Breakfast Club. Okay, for my artistic people, you can do a 1-pager, which just allows you to visually represent your analysis too. You'll still need to write stuff out as well, but this would kind of allow you to, instead of just writing it in paragraph form, you kind of break up the elements a little bit more and then use visuals to convey it as well. And I have some examples of that on the next page. And then feel free to do it by hand and then upload a picture, or you can do, for my less artistic people like me, I can't draw, I could do like a electronic 1-pager and just insert images from the internet and things like that to display my visual analysis. Okay, and the last one I feel like, or not the last one, number 3, I feel like is the easiest option for my people who like to pick the easy one. You can convey your analysis in just a chart or a Google Slides. So what's nice about this compared to the traditional paragraph response is you're kind of just doing one piece at a time. It doesn't all have to flow together as perfectly as if you're writing out a formal paragraph. So you can just, do one slide that shows the rhetorical situation and sort of breaks it down. Then you can do one slide that talks about the rhetorical techniques, and then one slide that analyzes one of those techniques. So that's just a way to a little bit break it down, make it a little more straightforward. And then below you can see some examples of one-pagers. So it's just a combination of writing and visuals. So like I said, if you're a more artistic or creatively minded person, you might pick that one. Okay. So do you guys have any options about how, I know this is a little bit different because we're used to just writing out our paragraphs. So do you guys have any questions about any of these 4 options or what you need to include in them?
Nope.
No. Jose, Ryan, Alex, good?
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay. Any inklings on which one you're gonna do? Which one you're drawn to? Seeking it, creative one-pager, slideshow, or paragraphs?
Probably 3 or 4 for me.
Three or 4 for Jose?
Yeah.
Same.
Same.
I would say 1 or 3.
1 or 3? Yeah. I think 1 would be fun, and I think it's kind of easy. You're like, I don't have to write it down. I can just talk about it. So it's kind of nice. All right, cool. Sounds good. So again, you're gonna do this after we go over, and I'll try to be quick. I know we spent a long introduction there, but I'll try to be quick as we go back through the text. But now I want to go over the work that you did yesterday. So if you want to open up your document to sort of check your analysis, because pretty much the hardest thing about rhetorical analysis writing is if you accidentally misinterpret something in the text, or more often than not, we're just not analyzing the text deeply enough. And so that's what I want to make sure we go over, so that you've thought about the text accurately and deeply, so that whichever one of the choices you pick, you're going to convey effective analysis of what the speaker was trying to do. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead. I want to just quick recap what we went over together yesterday as a class. So we only went through like the introduction, where he was trying to like bring the state together and make them think of their pride for the state of New York. And then he went over the updates of how many people were being hospitalized, but kind of started to comfort them and explain to them, hey, there's a reason why these numbers look like the way they do. We're a way bigger city than any other place in the US. So yeah, so we left off right there with his updates. And so we'll go ahead and continue on to the next paragraph. Certain communities, frankly, more in New York City than other communities, but you also see an increase on Long Island, which is something we're concerned about. Long Island does not have as elaborate a healthcare system as New York City. We don't have the same amount of resources on Long Island, and we see an increase in the number of cases on Long Island, and that has us very concerned. Supplies, PPE, are in short supply as they are across the country. We need companies to make the materials. It's unbelievable to me that in New York State, in the United States of America, we can't make these materials, and that we're all shopping China to try to get these materials, and we're all competing against each other. Okay, so what is Cuomo concerned about here, guys? What did you notice? What's he a little bit worried about?
I think he's worried about the supplies on Long Island. Like, we're really focused on New York in the earlier paragraph, like the big amounts, and then not thinking about like Long Island.
Yes.
Because it's still part of New York.
Absolutely. Worried about the healthcare supplies in other areas of the state, particularly Long Island, since they've seen an increase. Okay, and then he's also showing concerns there at the end, right? Like, there's why is there this shortage overall? Why are we having to go to China? Like, he's worried about all this stuff, right? So why do you think he shares that with the audience? Why is he sharing? That seems like kind of this odd thing to do when we see before he's trying to comfort the audience in saying, hey, there's a reason our numbers are higher. But now he starts sharing things that he's worried about. Why do you think he might do that?
I think he might do that because in the early paragraph, if he's very calm with the idea, then people will be like, oh, it's not that big of a deal, versus like if he's also giving them concerns like, yeah, this isn't something to panic about, but also like, look, this is serious.
Excellent. Okay. So he shares this with the audience so they know there's a big problem right now. Or I'll use your words, Nadia, because it was even better. A serious issue right now that needs to be handled. Okay, so he's not trying to create panic necessarily, but like you said, he wants them to see how serious it is, and there are concerns that need to be addressed. Okay, so I think like this needs to be taken care of. Okay. What did you notice? I thought this was kind of interesting. It's unbelievable to me that in New York State, in the United States of America, we can't make these materials, that we're all shopping China to get these materials, that we're competing against each other. What do you think that shows about him as a speaker? That he's saying like these things are unbelievable to him.
That he's like critical, like of the U.S.
Yeah, definitely. He's being critical, right? He's kind of saying like this is ridiculous, right? Like this is so ridiculous. So by him being critical of that, though, kind of shows like what is he gonna have to do then? If he's, kind of being critical of like the U.S. or like there's this big problem overall, what is he gonna do? What is he kind of setting up?
That he's gonna step it up in New York.
Yeah, he's got to take action. So it shows like, he's not okay with something not being done. Like he's being critical and he needs to step up and take action. All right, so as we keep going along here, these are not complex materials, and these two paragraphs really kind of go closely together here, but these are not complex materials. We will work with New York manufacturers. We'll finance the transition necessary to make these materials. I mean, we talk about them as if they're very complicated. This is an N95 mask. This is it. It was 70 cents before this started. It's now as high as $7. This is all that an N95 mask is. It's fabric, it's material. The FDA has the specifications, and then it's 2 pieces of elastic cord. It can't be that we can't make these. This is a gown. We call them gowns. This is a gown. There's nothing sophisticated about the manufacturing of this garment. Not to degrade the garment, there's just nothing sophisticated about the material. Okay, so I kind of like really wanted you to pay attention to this rhetorical choice here. So he's using a very matter-of-fact tone to talk about like, right? These aren't complicated, these aren't fancy. So he's being very like down to earth or matter-of-fact with the audience. Why do you think he speaks in that sort of tone? What do you think was his purpose for talking in that manner? Like, this isn't fancy, this isn't sophisticated, it's not complicated. What do you think he might want to do by saying
that? Maybe like tell them he's saying that in a way to make it seem like for the American people, this is not difficult to make, so don't be concerned because it will happen.
Okay, so to emphasize how simple these supplies are, so they know that this can be fixed. Awesome. So why might this particular matter of fact or simple tone, why do you think that would be persuasive to his particular audience? If he's talking to the whole state of New York, why would a matter of fact or sort of down to earth, relatable tone, why do you think that would work with them?
It makes him very confident.
Okay. So makes them feel confident in his ability to take care of it.
Yeah.
He's just talking to them straight up, right? He has nothing to hide, so it sort of helps to like build that trust in his confidence. Awesome job, Jose. All right. It can't be that companies in this country and in this state can't transition to make those supplies quickly. Again, I understand if there's a financial burden, we will address that and we will work with you, so please contact us. Javits is going to be converted into a COVID facility. The original plan was to use Javits in the State Convention Center. It was retrofitted by the Army Corps of Engineers to hold 2,500 people. The original plan was that it would not take COVID positive patients. It would take non-COVID patients, and it would be an overflow for hospitals. As it turned out, we don't have non-COVID people to any great extent in the hospitals. Hospitals have now turned into effective ICU hospitals for COVID patients. So we wanted to convert Javits from non-COVID to COVID. It's federally run. Frankly, the federal agencies were not eager to do that. FEMA is not eager to do that. I called the president. I spoke to him about it yesterday morning. Yesterday afternoon, the president called me back and he spoke to the task force. They would grant the request to transition the Javits Center to COVID only. This adds 2,500 beds, so that it's a very big deal, and I thank the president for doing it. He did it despite the fact that the federal agencies were not eager to do it, and he did it quickly. So I thank him for that. It's a really big deal for us. Okay, so he goes into this whole thing, explaining to them how he adjusted this plan. So this was originally going to be an extension of a hospital for non-COVID people, but as he noticed the situation changing, then he wanted to convert it for COVID patients. We need additionally 2,500 beds for COVID patients. That's what we're seeing is the need in our hospitals. So what does this action and the way he talks about it to the audience reveal about him as a speaker? The fact that he explains to them this was the original plan, and here's why we changed it. What do you think that shows about him?
I said that it shows that he's willing to make changes, even like when he changes like his original like statement, to overall like benefit the state as a whole.
Absolutely. Okay, so he's willing to adjust and make changes that are logical as he sees what's going on and what's going to, you said benefit the state as a whole, correct? Yeah, perfect. Okay, so he noticed, right, that there wasn't that need for non-COVID patients. They weren't running out of space for them. They just needed more space for the COVID patients. Okay. So why would this whole description, this whole update, why do you think this would be persuasive to the audience? What's this going to make them feel or think, and why?
I think it's persuasive to the audience because it shows them that he's dedicated to uphold his like original promise that he's going to do everything he can, even if it means to like change his original plans to do so.
Yeah, so he's dedicated to doing what's best. Okay, and if they see like he's already adjusted plans, that he'll continue to adjust as needed, right? So it kind of gives them that hope for the future as well, right? Moving forward, if there needs to be more adjustments, he'll make them as necessary. So he will continue to do whatever is necessary. Can't spell, all right. I don't know. There's certain words that I always mess up every time. Okay. All right. So here we get into the meat of it. All right, we still have the challenge of ventilators. We don't have enough, period. The situation is very simple now. People come in, they're almost all COVID people. Ironically, the number of non-COVID cases has dropped because so many things are shut down that you don't have the same number of automobile accidents. So people getting hit by cars, you don't see the same crime rate, so you don't have the same number of trauma cases coming into a hospital. They are COVID cases, and many of them go right to the ICU. In the ICU, you need a ventilator, and if you don't have a ventilator, the process stops, and we don't have enough ventilators. So we're doing everything possible, splitting of ventilators, using BiPAP machines by this new protocol, using the anesthesia ventilators. We're talking to the federal government to be as helpful as they can from this federal stockpile. But in truth, I don't believe the federal stockpile has enough to help all the states because you can't buy the material at this point. We're still trying to buy from China. We're working with Alibaba, which has been very, very helpful to us. I spoke to Jack Ma and Mike Evans, who is the president, and they've been personally gracious and very, very helpful in trying to get us through source material from China. But we're going to have to redeploy ventilators from across the system. In other words, there are hospitals that have ventilators. There are hospitals that have PPE equipment. There are private sector companies that have PPE equipment that they are not using, and we're going to need to redeploy to these places in the hospitals where we need them. I had a conversation with the hospital administrator yesterday. I understand that they don't want to give up their ventilators. Ventilators are expensive pieces of equipment. I understand that even if they're not using them, they're reluctant to see them go out the door. Okay. So this was a really, really big key part of the speech here, the update. So he's sharing this problem about the ventilators. He's sharing all of the things that they've been trying to do to solve it, but the solution being to redeploy equipment that's not being used in certain hospitals to the ones that need that. But he understands that hospitals don't want to do that. They're reluctant, right? These are expensive. They don't want to give them up. So why do you think he shares with the audience that he understands the hospital's perspective? Why do you think he said, like, hey, I understand you don't want to let go of these. Like, I get it. Like, you don't, they're expensive. I get it. What do you think?
I said that he wants to, like, have the state of New York, like, be understood, that he acknowledges, like, the hospital's point of view in order to make sure that they know, like, he's not trying to cause more chaos than there already is, and he's not trying to create tension between these companies.
Oh my gosh, you're blowing my mind. You're doing awesome. All right. So he understands their perspective. So he's trying to demonstrate he understands their perspective in order to prove he's not making this decision to cause tension with them or take away their rights. Okay. You might even word it as like he sympathizes with them a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in that financial aspect, like he gets that it's a sacrifice. Okay, and what does it reveal about him? Okay, this proves he really thinks through all sides of a decision and who is impacted by it. But again, what's he trying to prioritize? He's not trying to prioritize the hospital administrators. What's he trying to prioritize?
The life and, like, safety of New York citizens.
Yeah. But again, he is prioritizing the lives and safety of the whole state of New York, above all. Okay, so we're now on to the final two. So the theory is if the government gets them, they'll never get them back. I understand that. But I don't have an option. I'm not going to get into a situation where we know we're running out of ventilators and we could have people dying because there are no ventilators. But there are hospitals in other parts of the state that have the ventilators and they're not using them. I'm just not going to allow us to go there. I think it would be wholly irresponsible. So I'm going to sign an executive order that says the state can take ventilators and PPE from institutions that don't need them now and redeploy them to other parts of the state and other hospitals that do need them. Those institutions will either get their ventilator back or they will be reimbursed and paid for their ventilators so they can buy a new ventilator. Okay, so this is huge. Okay, so what did he share? We kind of already talked about this. He shares the executive order. Okay, and he goes into detail there. So again, he kind of breaks it down. This is what's going to happen. We can take them. You'll either get it back or you'll get money back. So again, he's trying to like appease them as much as he can, right? Appease the hospitals and private companies, but prioritizing the people that need the ventilators. Okay. How do you think he delivered this news effectively in this particular paragraph? Again, this is what rhetoric is all about. He knows this is going to be a tough subject for the audience, so he has to make sure he delivers it in an effective way.
So I said that he delivers this news by referencing like the hospital's point of view, and then he initiates an executive order to force like the decision he's making, and then he states that the institutions that gave up their ventilators will be reimbursed or provided with like a new ventilator.
Okay, awesome. Anything to add, the rest of you? Anything that you thought was really effective in the way that he addressed it? Was there any like key words that you saw in there that you thought were like a word or a phrase or anything that you felt like this is how he's really trying to convince people that this is the right thing to do?
Dying. The word dying.
Yeah. So particularly he says we could have people dying if there's no ventilators.
Yeah.
Okay. So the fact that, you know, he says it's irresponsible if we don't do this because we're letting people die. So he's really prioritizing, like, or really trying to show again this moral duty, right, to take care of the people who are dying. Okay. So again, he acknowledges the hospital's perspective, but proves that the people's lives are more important. So that's, again, that sort of moral appeal. So we can even address that. Just if that gives you any ideas for your mouse. Okay. So again, he just finishes this part of the speech off. Remember, this is just the beginning. I can't do anything more than that, but I'm not going to be in a position where people are dying and we have several hundred ventilators in our own state somewhere else. I apologize for the hardship to those institutions. Ultimately, there's no hardship. If you don't get the ventilator back, I give you my personal word. I will pay you for the ventilator, but I'm not going to let people die because we didn't redistribute ventilators. The National Guard are going to be deployed to pick up these ventilators, which are all across the state, and deploy them to places where we need them. So what justifications does he give for his actions? And what does this reveal about him as a speaker? What do you guys think about that? What's his ultimate justification here?
His justification is kind of for all the actions he's taken, like the executive order, because he uses like people are dying, hospitals are dealing with hardships, but he also not only cares about people and for them to not die, but also he cares about like fairness overall by making sure he's saying he's going to redistribute ventilators to like satisfy as many people or groups, so like the institutions and people struggling with virus.
Yeah, he's trying to accommodate the institutions as much as possible, but he's not willing to sacrifice at all the possibility of having what on his hands?
Deaths or
Yeah.
blood.
He doesn't want blood or deaths on his hands, right? So it's like, I get where you're coming from. I get why you're worried about this, but I'm not gonna like sit here and not make this order, because then if we have more and more people die and we could have saved them, like that's on all of us. So once again, remember, this all ties back to that beginning of the speech where he's really trying to say, like, the state of New York, out of many, we have one. We are one state. So we have to think about everybody. So he justifies the order by prioritizing the possibility of saving more lives, not wanting to risk more suffering for individuals. Okay, and as you guys already said, this is persuasive to the particular audience, okay, because it appeals to their morals. It shows that he cares about everyone, and trying to make the best decision for the state. Okay, so as we wrap it up here, okay, what did he need to persuade his audience of and why, and how did he effectively persuade him? Okay, we've been answering this over and over and over and over again throughout the speech as we sort of broke it up. So now we just have to like sum up all of our findings together. So ultimately, overall, in this whole excerpt of the speech, what do you think he really needed to persuade people of? Which didn't work on everyone necessarily, but
That he has his power to fight this virus, like for the safety of the New Yorkers.
say that again.
He's like doing everything in his power to help like fight this virus and keep safe for the like New Yorkers, to keep them safe.
And particularly, what was going to help him do that? What particular action was going to help him do that?
Oh, the executive orders.
Yeah, the executive order. So that's sort of the new piece that he really had to persuade people of. Okay, so I love how you started it, and we're just going to add that executive order piece in there. Okay, so he needed to persuade the state of New York that he is doing everything in his power to take care of all people in the state. And this executive order with the ventilators is essential for doing so. Okay, so he really had to convince them that this was the right decision. Again, people might be upset, even if you're not a hospital. Even if let's say you live in a small upstate New York town, you might be upset that the equipment from the hospitals closer to you are being redeployed to New York City or Long Island or other places. So he really had to try to convince any citizen in the state, like, hey, this is the best decision for everybody. So how do you think he effectively persuaded them? And again, when we think about rhetoric, it's how did they try to be effective? Again, not everyone's going to buy into your argument, but what was he trying to do to persuade them of this purpose? And this is, again, where we start to get into your rhetorical choices. So remember that today you're going to have to choose 3 significant ones So we could talk about 3 different ones. What do you think were some major things he did to try to persuade them?
He was using logic, a lot of logic.
Okay. He used a lot of logic. Excellent.
Mm.
What kind of logic do you feel like he used, Jose?
When he saw that there wasn't very many non-COVID-19 patients, and he made the transfer of that hospital to
Excellent.
other
Okay,
people.
so he used like logical reasoning, right?
Yeah.
So he persuades them effectively by showing his logical reasoning in his decision making. What else?
Appeal to credibility.
Tell me more about that.
So he talks about what he's going to do about it, specific actions, so executive orders, who he's talked to like progress this, the basically just the order overall. He also has specific like numbers for how many COVID-19 patients and like which hospitals are overwhelmed, kind of like
so demonstrating his own credibility.
Yeah.
Okay, so he shows us his logical reasoning, demonstrating his credibility so far. Okay, tell me more, tell me more. What else? Remember, if we look at this specific purpose, you have to be okay with this executive order because what's his justification? What is he really appealing to? Which Nate didn't buy into. Sorry, shouting out Nate. It doesn't always come down to logic when you're saying we need to redistribute these ventilators to save people's lives. What does it come down to?
Morals.
Morals. Yeah. So this has to be about like, this is more than just like logic and reason. This is about like caring about those individual lives. Okay. So appealing to the morals of his audience. And then there's one more that I think, and again, you only need to address 3 of them. But there's one more that I think is pretty important because again, it's how we started this whole thing. And then he builds upon that throughout. Is he's trying to do what to the whole state?
Reassure them that they're fine.
He's definitely trying to reassure them. But remember that like New York is really big. You've got New York City that's really suffering. You've got Long Island, which their cases are starting to increase. But then you've got all these more rural areas of New York. So what is he trying to do to that state? And we have this here in our analysis in this first paragraph.
He's trying to unify.
Yes, perfect. Okay, so that unity is key, right? Again, if I'm someone who lives out in rural New York, we got to think about the audience. He has to make me care about those other people outside of rural New York and make me care about the people in New York City and the people in Long Island and the people here. We got to do what's best for the whole state, not just what's best for me out in my own little community. Okay, so and most importantly, unifying the audience under the state. Okay. Sweet. Okay, well, I can already tell from your guys' contribution to our discussion here that you did a phenomenal job with your analysis of this speech. So now that you kind of went over and you have really like full accurate description, now you can go ahead and choose one of these. Again, you're just summing up all of that rhetorical situation, really conveying it. So this is what you would do. Again, if you're picking that traditional one that we're going to practice once a week already, this is what goes in your intro paragraph already. You got to talk about the rhetorical situation, and you got to talk about those major rhetorical strategies that were used to achieve it. So that's like your intro paragraph right there. Okay. And then you've got to do like that one body paragraph for deeply thinking about one of those rhetorical choices. So again, feel free if you don't want to write it out, speak it out instead. creatively represent it through images, or do a slideshow. Okay? Any questions, y'all? No? Okay. Well, I will be back for office hours at 1 if you need any help. So just let me know if you have any questions then. Otherwise, like I said, you made it to Friday, so I hope you guys all have an awesome weekend. Is anyone doing anything fun? Any adventures coming up?
No, maybe like continue my run.
Ooh, yes, keep it going, keep it strong.
Yeah, I finished Richard yesterday, so now I'm like moving into the actual story today.
Yes, running, reading, all that good stuff. I'm gonna make waffles this weekend. I'm really excited for that.
Ooh,
Sounds really good.
waffle sounds good.
But like savory waffles with like sausage and cheese in them.
Mm.
Wow.
What about you, Alex? Anything?
I might go hiking with my stepsister this weekend. So.
Yes. Are you gonna go back to Estrella or somewhere different?
I will probably go somewhere in Mesa because that's where my dad lives.
Oh, cool.
But yeah, I don't know.
There's so much good hiking over there, like those big superstition mountains and everything.
Yeah.
I meant to ask too, was Estrella very crowded or no?
Mm-mm.
Okay, cool.
There wasn't a lot of people there.
I really want to go hiking too. My friend and we haven't seen each other through this whole time, but we're like, okay, if we go hiking and we keep distance,
Yeah.
So we were thinking about going to South Mountain.
Ooh, I love South Mountain. That's my favorite so far.
Jose, Ryan, anything fun planned?
No.
I don't know, but going off of the like South Mountain thing, I went on Wednesday since it was Flex Wednesday and it was really nice.
Oh, you did? Which
Yeah.
do you know like where you went? Because it's so big that I feel like some parts are like more crowded or some parts might
I went on let me find it.
And you can all, sorry, I know I'm like really bad. It's weird. I'm like fine with directions on a grid, but then like once I'm like out in the open, I'm like, I don't know where I am.
Oh, I went on the Kiwanis Trail.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm definitely gonna look into that one because I think that's my plan for this weekend. South Mountain. All right, guys. Well, I'll let you get to it. I want you to enjoy your Friday. Thanks for sticking with me through this long process, and you guys did so awesome. Breakfast Club, you're the best.
Yeah.
Yay.
Have a great day. Have a good weekend.
You too.
Bye, Ms.
Thank
Miller.
you.
Bye, Miss
Bye.
Miller.